On the field, the Marlins still showing fight. Skip Schumacher has the boys fired up. They couldn't get it done. Drop game 2 against the Brew Crew. However, off the field, we get news that the Miami Herald pulling back its coverage of the Marlins. Not a good sign. Equally, we also see over the weekend some controversy regarding the Marlins Museum. Whilst the guys continue to battle on the field, off the field, have the fans lost interest in the Marlins? Tons to get into. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK. If you're listening to the pod, firstly, hello and greetings. Welcome to Wednesday's show. Firstly, this is your team every day, and thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. Make sure you hit subscribe, leave a review. This podcast is available everywhere, wherever you get your pods. There's also a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on YouTube. Join me in the comments as well. Let me know your thoughts on every single episode. I read every comment. Most of them are positive, particularly about the show. Maybe less so about the team. We're going to get into that a little bit later on. This episode is sponsored by our good friends over at eBay Motors. And from brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. And on the field, the Marlins continue to battle. Skip Schumacher in his post-game presser praising the Marlins, particularly the offense and the bullpen, that they continue to fight back. They showed that in multiple games. We've seen that a lot recently. There's a lot of fight in this group. Unsurprising, of course. They dropped the game in the end. Unfortunately, they managed to get themselves in the lead. However, AJ Puck with the blowy, unfortunately, 3 runs in that 8th inning for the Brew Crew. A lot of hits. Both teams, they combine actually for 23 hits total. So plenty of offense, plenty of action, plenty of runners. A lot going on. The Marlins, they were slow out the blocks. Obviously, Trevor Rogers wasn't his best outing. A lot of hard contact early, I would say, from Trev. And a lot of walks, too. A lot of leadoff walks, which is never what you're looking for. I think it's particularly those leadoff walks are always the most damaging because you've got a runner on that effectively has, a pretty good chance of getting to second if they really want to be aggressive on the bases and no outs. So those leadoff walks, they hurt you and they hurt you the most. And we saw that with Trevor. Wasn't his best. It's definitely continued being up and down with Trev. Skip spoke about it though post-game. I think the main thing to call out for Trev, the velo was up from where it was. We saw obviously Skip post-game on what day was that? Sunday, fully slandering Sixto for the lack of velo in the first inning. So Trevor's trying to get the velo up. He's showing that, but there's a trade-off, right? You put more velo in, the mechanics maybe start to fall away. There's an impact. There's a trade-off. The harder you throw, maybe the impact is you have less command, less control, less control over what you're doing with the baseball. So I think they have to find the right balance, I would say. So I'm interested to see what this looks like for Trev ongoing. But, there was no unacceptable situation here with Trev. He just didn't quite have it on that specific day. But the Marlins offense, they more than kept them in it. They took the lead at one point. And in the last 2 games, what we've seen specifically from the offense has been the base running has all of a sudden clicked into gear. All of a sudden, the Marlins are back playing. They're playing the type of baseball that I've always expected them to play. It's the type of baseball that they were famous for in 2020. When they went on that COVID run, it was all about small ball. It was all about runners getting the runners going in motion, stealing bags, being aggressive on the bases, all of this stuff. We haven't really seen much of that. during the Skip Schumacher era within the Marlins. Obviously, they made the postseason last year, but they were not aggressive on the bases. Skip spoke about it in the offseason, actually, with a few of the guys on Fish on First. They had a relatively heated conversation around this specific topic area. And I think what Skip called out was we didn't quite have the profile of guy that could maybe take advantage of the change in the rules. Arias isn't running, Bell's not running, Berger's not running, Stallings isn't running. You kind of go down, and it's like, well, who is there to run? What, Jazz and maybe Jesus Sanchez, and that was about it. So I get it. The profile and the athlete profile this year is definitely different. And what we saw yesterday was, an electric play, which, is the perfect description in many ways, but a bunt from Otto Lopez. He did that on his own, by all accounts. That was his own decision. A bunt was dropped down. Jazz was stood on second, and he scores from second on a bunt. Absolutely incredible base running from Jazz. Heads-up play. I love it when Jazz is being aggressive on the bases. I love it when the Marlins are being aggressive on the bases. And we saw that not just in Tuesday's game, but in Monday's game, where there was just, there was, how many stolen backs were there? Like 6 in the game. Must be the most ever in the Skip Schumacher era, and it must be the most probably for some time. Someone look that up and let me know. I don't know how to do it, but it felt like in terms of total number of stolen backs, right up there. I'd love to see it. And they were spread around too. They were obviously late in the game where they were chasing the game and trying to get, the pressure on, etc. You get it, right? And I think that's kind of part of it for the Fish, where the strategic approach here isn't just run at will. I think, and this is the thing, like they have it in the tank, where if they want to steal some bags, I think they could. And so as the year progresses, I'm interested to see, like, does this team run more akin to what I was expecting? I've always felt that there's plenty in the tank to run. Jesus Sanchez has been showing it. We know Jazz. I'm pretty sure like Dane, Nick Gordon, Otto Lopez, Vidal Brujan for sure. Like, that's 5-6 guys that can easily swipe a bag. And with the rules the way they are now, if you're looking to be aggressive and you're smart and your head's up, there's plenty of opportunity out there for you. You've got a guy. How many stolen bags has Ellie De La Cruz got at this point? I don't know. Has he got like 30 stolen bags in mid-May or something? Like, if you've got wheels and you've got your head screwed on, there's so many opportunities, no doubt, because the pitchers don't have the ability just to keep you tight. There's a pitch clock. Everything's against the pitchers, keeping runners on. Controlling the running game is tough. And for a team like the Marlins that is a little bit lacking in overall talent, potentially, this is what they need to do. They need to lean on this type of game and manufacture runs. And frankly, it's fun. Like, as a fan, this is the type of baseball that I personally find fun. I find it exciting. And I know, a lot of people may get turned on by the long ball, but I personally, I find it just as exciting, if not more exciting. That Jazz play, the bunt and Jazz scores from second. Come on. How often do you see that? That's the type of play that gets me and my juices flowing. No doubt. It's great to see. And as always, as I say with Jazz, and everyone that listens to this podcast regularly will know I'm a huge Jazz fan because he's a difference maker. He can do things on a baseball field that only a very small number of guys can do. They, by definition, are the difference makers, and Jazz is absolutely one of them. Let's pause in the action there for a second. I want to talk then about some of the off-field stuff as well. Some of the off-field stuff, particularly some of the things that were happening regarding the Marlins Museum over the weekend. It was a bit of a confusing situation around the museum. So I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about the way that the local market is and will be covering the Marlins moving forward, particularly the Miami Herald. And so I think it's all kind of contextualized. You've got the guys on the field fighting, playing hard, playing tough. I want to carry on that conversation shortly as well. But also, like, what's happening off the field, both from what the Marlins control themselves and equally the people, the organizations, the reporters that are there to follow the Marlins. And frankly, the way they're pulling back on coverage due to the lack of engagement. Before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at PrizePicks. Yes, sir. And if you were looking for the under on the Trevor Rogers innings yesterday, you'd have been absolutely taking that one to town. Nevertheless, PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. It has more than 3 million members right now, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just have to pick more or less than on 2 or more player stats and watch those winnings roll in. If you're a baseball fan, and if you're listening to Locked On Marlins, you probably are. PrizePicks lets you pick from all your favorite players on the diamond, including, of course, Jazz Chisholm Jr. Considering the number of stolen bases right now, I'm hitting the over. I'm hitting the more on Jazz stolen bags today, no doubt about it. But you can pick from strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. You take your pick, or more or less than, and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. And they don't just have, it's not just baseball, guys. They cover everything. You can end up having a pick in between LeBron, Ohtani, Connor McDavid, and Jude Bellingham. Package them all up, all in the same entry. No doubt about it. So what have you got to do? You got to download the app today. It's PrizePicks, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Reminder, download the app today. Download PrizePicks. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. It's all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, welcome back to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. We are carrying on the conversation here. I just wanted to finish up talking about yesterday and what we saw. Obviously, AJ Puck, after I gave him the big gun, I gave it the big tweet. I think the Marlins have found their closer. I spoke about it on the show. Tanner Scott, we know, will be moved at some point. There is a role that will open. There's a vacancy. There's a guy that's done it before, done it well for a period, that could step into that. Unfortunately, AJ Puck yesterday, his first blowy of the year. It's an 0-5 now for AJ Puck. Unfortunately, giving up 3 earned runs in that 8th inning. Very, very disappointing there for AJ Puck. Just on the offensive side, just want to call out Tim Anderson back, baby. 2 for 4 day, including one of those runs scoring. I think it's fair to say as well for Emmanuel Rivera, who was playing third base yesterday. It feels like since Jake Berger's been back, his opportunity has been squeezed. He's become very much a bench player. I was starting to consider like what the future could hold with Emmanuel Rivera, but he's in there. Obviously, when the Marlins are facing those lefties, they have had this platoon lineup that we've seen. And Emmanuel Rivera there at third base. 2 hits yesterday. 2 hits and an RBI, which was really encouraging as well. Dane Myers, another hit for him. Couple of hits for De La Cruz. After I pumped up Josh Bell, he ends up with an 0 for 4 day, of course. Jazz Chisholm with 2 hits. And obviously that electric play running the bases. Great to see. Overall, a disappointing L, considering the Marlins got themselves back into it. Yelich doing the damage late on that one. The Marlins are going this evening. Not UK-friendly, unfortunately, but you have, as I think, Fish on first, and probably Eli behind this one, saying ace on ace in this one, in Freddy Peralta against Jesus Luzardo. Peralta's ERA currently over 4, and Jesus Luzardo's just a tick over 5 for Jesus Luzardo. So we'll wait to see how this one goes. But as we know, rumors continue to circle around Jesus Luzardo. We will see how that one plays out as we get into the season and a little bit closer to the deadline, perhaps. Right, let's talk about I'm going to start with the Miami Herald. I'll talk about the news here with Barry Jackson talking about it. And the news really is effectively Jordan McPherson will be switching it up, seemingly. He's been the beat writer for a number of years for the Marlins, covering them home and away. Does a great job, no doubt. Friend of the show, friend of the previous show that I hosted as well. So, know Jordan relatively well. He's been covering the Panthers more recently as they've gone into their postseason run. Makes sense. But Jordan McPherson, he's going to switch it across once the Panthers are done with their season. and he's going to follow the Canes instead. So effectively, that signals that the Herald will be moving away from a day-to-day, a daily beat writer from the Herald. And, they'll piecemeal it seemingly. I don't know the phrase, the exact language that Barry Jackson used. It was something like a patchwork of talent. And I know Isaac Azout, by the way. Isaac Azout, another friend of the show, has been writing for the Herald because I guess Jordan's been he's been tied up. The Herald's looking for people to help with some Marlins coverage and patch this up a little bit. And seemingly Isaac Azout stepped into that. So congrats to Isaac for that and kind of branching into something slightly different for him. Opportunities created, etc. But for me, what's clear with the Herald is they're signaling that they're going to kind of pull back on their coverage. And then Barry Jackson calls it out to say that, the paper has invested hundreds of thousands into covering the Marlins over the past however many years. And frankly, the cost to serve doesn't deliver the return that's required. Clearly, in general, the sector is a tough sector. It's struggling more generally right now as, a lot of people are unwilling, let's say, to pay for content, which is an interesting concept in general, but it's just it's where things are at in the segment right now, where a lot of people want content for free. By the way, Locked On Marlins is for free. So I just want to mention that. But for this written element, it is paywalled. And, it's been a challenge in that sector, clearly. So I get it. I get that. And thus, everything needs to be a viable business model. And it's probably got to the point with the Herald more generally, but equally with the Marlins, that the cost to serve this market and this team, frankly, isn't worth the return, which is really disappointing in many ways because, listen, I'm as you know, I'm not sat in Miami right now, and I'm not, I don't live in Miami, but I feel like it's really discouraging where, another beat writer, unfortunately, is pulled away onto something different. And the reason that's happening is fundamentally down to the lack of engagement that the Marlins generally draw. There's a lack of engagement for the Marlins. There's a lack of appetite. There's a lack of excitement around the Marlins. Yes, there's a core, and the core is watching this show right now. And there's peripheral guys, peripheral fans, casuals, as you may want to describe them, that, will dip in and out. And right now they've dipped out because the season's cooked and they're not really interested in understanding the development and the progress of Otto Lopez, Emmanuel Rivera, and Vidal Brujan. They're not bothered about that. They're not bothered that the Marlins have claimed an MVP candidate on waivers. No. Casuals have tapped out. So it's just discouraging. The interesting thing that I wanted to call out, having been part of the, and for those that don't know, during the COVID season, all baseball teams did pre-game, post-game via Zoom. For those that weren't aware either, I was part of that. I was a part of the Marlins Zoom room and was able to join pre and post game and put my questions to the players, to Donnie, Derek Jeter, whatever it might be, which was an amazing opportunity. So what I'd say in that situation is there was a general cluster of people covering the team, media that were covering the team on a daily basis. Jordan McPherson was in that cluster. Joe Pizzara was in that cluster. Craig Mish was there a ton. There was a lot of people there. There were other certain days where a larger amount of media guys would also turn up. And the reason they could do that is, well, it's Zoom. It's virtual. You don't have to be in and around the ballpark to get there to ask questions and get some information back or ask on a story. I remember one time specifically, Andy Slater turned up. It was always great when Andy Slater joined these presses, no doubt. But I'm pretty sure Andy Slater was joining from a hotel lobby in, I want to say like Venezuela or something, or Cuba. I don't know. Like Andy Slater was living his best life. Probably looking for somewhere to put down some bets, whatever it might be. But I just love that. The way that the media wasn't restricted by geography. And I have a slight bias because I am geographically a long way away from Miami. But you do have to wonder. Right now, if you look at it, the Herald have pulled back. The Marlins right now are being covered on a daily basis, and they play every day by the guys from Bali, who do a great job, by the way. I absolutely love all of them. You got the Bali guys, who have to be there. You got MLB.com, primarily Christina Di Nicola. You've got the Fish on First studs that are there. There's usually 2 or 3 of them at the ballpark. You've then got the Extra Base guys, in effect, Danny Alvarez, Noah Berger switch allegiances there on that one. But beyond that, that's kind of it. That's the media scrum. The network, MLB.com, and Fish on First, and El Extra Base. That's it. Like, that's not enough. It's not enough. And I do wonder if maybe the Marlins get creative with it and think, how can we drive engagement? How can we broaden our horizons? And one of those is increasing the way that media can access players, the manager, Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix. Open it up. Maybe get the Zoom room back going, baby. Maybe get the Zoom room back going. Because it'd be great to have Craig Mish hopping on those Zooms more regularly. It'd be great to have Andy Slater dialing in from Acapulco or whatever he is. I don't even know. You know, it'd be great to have Pete Pratt dialing into those Zoom rooms after 4 bottles of wine and trying to ask a question. I mean, anything's possible. But the point I'm making generally is it's discouraging that another media outlet is pulling back on the Marlins. And the reason it's pulling back is it's not profitable. The Marlins are not profitable to the paper. And there's a few reasons for that, but the fundamental deep one is the engagement is too low. It's disappointing. One other thing on engagement. I think this is really interesting as well. I look and compare a little bit with other Locked On shows. And, you know, go and have a look at like what engagement levels there are for other Locked On shows. Go and have a look at like Locked On Braves, for example, and see the viewer count per episode versus Locked On Marlins. It's huge. Locked On Cubs, huge. But there's other shows as well, like with teams that, you know, aren't superpower teams, but there's a fan base there, right? There's a fan base that exists in those markets. Those markets are interested in those teams at all times through thick and thin. I think it's a really interesting factor as well. It might just be that the host of Locked On Marlins is absolutely terrible. It could be that. It could be, and granted, that is possible. Or, I mean, having probably shared an episode with most of the hosts, all of them are absolutely stunning. Just one final point on this. I think, you know, Locked On, just to call it out, by the way, like you're seeing other outlets pulling away from daily sports coverage for every club. And I think that's one of the things and one of the USPs in some ways for Locked On and how they approach sports coverage. Your team every day. It's the mantra. And I guess, you know, we're seeing a shift in many ways of old media to new media, papers to podcasts. That's kind of it. And it creates opportunities for guys like me, of course. But I think there's a bit of a shift happening in the sector right now. Nevertheless, it feels like from a Marlins perspective, this might be a time to embrace the new media as well. It could be. Get on the front foot with it. There's opportunities there, I think, in my opinion, anyway. I want to talk about the Marlins Museum as well, because there was definitely a few issues around that topic area. So I'm going to talk about that very shortly. Before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at eBay Motors. And passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, Yep, you guessed it. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, guys, final segment here with me, Peter Pratt. Locked on Marlins. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen, guys. Final segment. Just want to talk about in ballpark experience. Specifically, I want to talk about the Marlins Museum because there was a few negative situations over the weekends around this specific topic area. Two of them in particular, I would say. The Marlins TV setup, which is old games, old clips about the Marlins on old TVs, all kind of pieced together. Kind of a cool feature. That, up until recently, was still there. But it was then demonstrated that actually they were, some of the TVs weren't working. It looked on demand. It looked poorly maintained. Now it's gone. Fully gone. The TVs, gone. The other thing, too, there was a Luis Arias cycle element within the museum that was removed. And then returned. Removed in error. Interesting. So there's that to talk about. I also want to talk about some of the aspects that has been mentioned on the Fish on First. Again, if you're not following the guys on Fish on First, following their content, watching their content, you should be, by the way. So please make sure you are, because those guys, if you're, again, looking for daily Marlins coverage, they are the elite guys. No doubt about it. Elite. Make sure you're following them. And so they, on one of the pods recently, they were talking about how Spanish has gone into overdrive in the ballpark, where it's everything is OTT Spanish. They're really trying to cater for the Latin market, clearly. The only problem with that is that clearly not everyone speaks Spanish. And so it ends up creating, a negative experience is kind of what the guys were sharing, for the majority of fans that don't speak Spanish. So I get what the Marlins are going for. They're trying to, forever trying to tap into that little Havana vibe, that, Latin vibe, Spanish vibes, all that kind of stuff. I get it. I get that's where they're going for, and trying to create that hub and almost lead with that, trying to lure people in, lure in the Spanish-speaking Latin guys and build kind of, a new fan base around those guys. I get it. I get where they're going, but the feedback from the English-speaking guys, it's maybe a touch too far. So turn the dial down a touch. I get it, though. The Marlins are trying everything, seemingly. Well, they're trying a lot of things. Whether they tried everything is up for debate. But, they're trying their best to find ways to inject, an atmosphere, a culture, all of the things that, frankly, they don't have at the moment. So they have to try things. And I'm not going to go down this path about why they don't, because we've covered it many times before on this show and many shows, and it's a long, windy road in that topic area. Fundamentally, if we boil it down, if the on-field product is fun, entertaining, and winning, they will come. That's it. Take all the gimmicks out of it, whatever language you want. The on-field product is fun. They will come. Pretty simple. Anyway, back to the museum. So the TVs removed. And we got into this situation in Twitter talking about how the Marlins, in the current guys with the current ownership group, have really struggled to embrace the past in many ways. And not fully embrace the past. The Marlins have won 2 World Series. It's a huge achievement for an organization in this type of market that, has its challenges, clearly. And there's been multiple owner changes. There's been multiple, team names. There's been multiple jersey changes, color schemes, ownership groups, you name it. There's been a lot that's gone on. But I think one of the things the Marlins have struggled to do is really connect with their past. I think that one of the most obvious parts of that is not having any retired numbers yet at all. No retired numbers, even though they've won 2 World Series. no retire. Like, it feels like they're struggling to connect with the past. We moved on from Teal, and I get it. The organization wants to go in its own way. Fair enough. But at the same time, it's obvious that there's like a core that are heavily connected to that. And maybe it's a good time to reconnect. I don't know. But it feels like the Marlins organization has had a bit of a challenge in acknowledging and fully embracing the past. That's what's being called out. And listen, I haven't been to the ballpark in many, many years. I've only been once. And so I'm trying to work off secondhand knowledge here. So let's get to the Marlins have like done some work around the museum elements. And Kevin Barral, I think, had a good YouTube video walking through the elements of the Marlins Museum back from 2 seasons ago. So maybe check that out on YouTube. But in this topic area specifically, the TVs element, where it was loads of old clips and old TVs all pieced together, good idea. Seemingly the TVs kind of went into disrepair. Now they're fully removed. So I did a bit of digging on this one specifically to understand like what's going on with TVs. Like what is specifically the problem with this one? The information I'd received back is fundamentally the TVs themselves, the units are super old, clearly, which is kind of what they're going for, but they're really super hard to maintain. And there's not the parts around. They're super expensive, all this kind of stuff. Like in an ideal world, you've got a ton of flat screens up on the wall playing these same clips and you get the vibes. So it felt like overall, it was a good idea. But the actual operational side of this, of maintaining like, 20, 30 old, like proper old TV units, wasn't really feasible. So the Marlins have pulled it because once a couple of them are broken and they can't be repaired, it then kind of completely messes with the whole experience, right? So I get what they've done. I understand that. Good idea. Wasn't quite sustainable. Let's pull the plug. Kind of feels like the Marlins roster in 2024. Nevertheless, the Luis Arias situation I thought was a very interesting one where he has a base and some elements linked to the day where he recorded the first ever Marlins cycle. For some reason, that was removed on, I believe, on the Saturday. It was reported, hey, they've removed this Luis Arias element from the museum. What the hell's going on? Obviously, a lot of people kind of confused at that, considering it's the first and only ever cycle, and it was removed. Like, what the hell's going on? Everyone's like, is it bad blood? What is it? Is like Arias and the Marlins, have they fallen out? Who knows? Anyway, next day it's back. It was removed in error, by all accounts. I don't understand how that can be an error. I'm not quite clear on, were there other things being changed at the time? Was it linked to the TVs? If they change things around more often? I don't know. What I do know is I know for sure on the TV situation. But what I don't know for sure is the Arias museum stuff. So keep digging on that. See what else I can glean. But it's back, and it should be back because Arias' first ever cycle, one of the best hitters that's ever played for the Marlins, even though it was only for just over a year, but still one of the best hitters ever for the Marlins and the first ever Marlins cycle. Luis Arias will forever be a Marlins legend, even though it was only just over a year. Rightly back in the museum. Going to wrap it up there, guys. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. The guys are fighting hard on the field. No doubt about it. Electric plays, the base running is really cooking. It's really starting to roll. And for me, I'm excited for that. I think it makes the Marlins a lot more engaging and to watch when they've got the small ball going on. It suits a lot of the profiles, the guys they've got. Trevor Rogers, focusing on the velo, couldn't quite get the balance with the command and everything else. So wait to see what we get from him next time out. Disappointing news around the Miami Herald, another local paper scaling back its coverage of the Marlins at this point, fundamentally down to a lack of engagement for the Marlins within their plethora of sports coverage. Love using that word, plethora, by the way. The Marlins Museum, slightly adjusted. The TV's gone. Too hard to maintain. So instead of having a poor experience, we just take him out of there. Luis Arias, not quite sure why it was removed, but it was in error. And his cycle information is back in the museum. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.